Hi, my name is Bob Frank. I'm a PADI instructor, and two of my favorite classes to teach are underwater photography and aquarium photography. Today I'd like to talk to you about some tips and techniques for placing your camera into its underwater housing. I'm going to be using today a Fantasea line FG16 housing, which is the companion product for the Canon G16 camera. First thing you want to do is make sure that your camera has a fresh battery and a memory card that has sufficient room on it so that you can store all the pictures and video that you want to take on your dive trip. There's nothing more frustrating than being halfway through a dive and either getting the message that your battery is empty or that your memory card is full. So I usually start with a fresh battery on every dive or every 2 dives, and I also put a fresh memory card in between dives as well, or between every 2 dives. I know my memory card and battery are good, so I'm going to put them back into the camera and close the camera door down. Next thing I want to do is I want to take my housing and I want to open my housing and do a quick check on it to make sure everything is working okay and appears in good shape. First thing I want to do is to check my friction O-ring that goes around the door, make sure there's no cracks in it, it looks like it's properly seated, it's not twisted or anything like that. You may want to look at our other video that we have on housing maintenance to learn how to maintain your O-ring, both the friction O-ring and the compression O-ring that's on the inside of the housing. Once I make sure that my O-ring is okay and everything looks all right in the housing, I want to put in some moisture munchers. I put a moisture muncher on each side of the lens port. The moisture munchers help keep condensation from forming in the inside of the housing. And the third thing I want to do is I want to check my leak detection in my Fantasea housing. Fantasea housings are one of the only housings on the market, and about the only ones at this price range, that have a leak detector built into the housing. If even a drop of water hits this strip on the bottom of the housing, it'll set an alarm off. I'm just going to moisten my finger and you can see how well that works. So I want to test that to make sure that my battery's in good shape and that the moisture sensor is working properly. I'm going to dry that off here so that it shuts off. And now I'm ready to put my camera into the housing. First thing I want to do is I want to lift the mode knob up a little bit. And again, your housing may be a little different than this, but you'll have the same general techniques you're going to need to do. I'm then going to pick my camera up and I'm going to gently slide it into the housing. As you can see, the Fantasea housings are a really snug fit on the Canon cameras, both the G15 and the G16. What I like about them is that it holds so well that even upside down, I know my camera is not going to be shaking around inside the housing. The next thing I want to do is I want to push my mode button down to make sure that it's nice and secure against the camera. And then I also like to raise my flash up. Even though I have a button on the housing that will raise my flash, I always want to do it myself so I know that the flash is up before I close the door. Speaking of that, there are some cameras that when you look at your pictures in the view mode between dives, if you leave it in the view mode and then put the camera back into the housing, you will not be able to turn the camera to a picture taking mode while it's in the housing. This is especially true on the Sea Life DC 1000 and I believe also on the DC 1200. So always make sure your camera is in the picture taking mode before you put it into the housing. Now that I've got the camera into the housing, my flash is up, my mode button is set, I'm now going to close the door on the housing and I want to hear that click that lets me know that it's locked. At this stage, I'm going to want to test everything, so I'm going to take the flash guard off the front of the strobe of the flash assembly. I'm going to turn my camera on and make sure that I get an image through the viewfinder. I'm going to snap a picture and make sure my picture came through okay. I want to check my zoom in and zoom out. And then if I would, in a dark room, I would take another picture to make sure that the flash works. Usually I have to go into a bathroom or someplace like that to take the picture to make sure the flash works. Once I'm done with that, I know everything is set. I can turn my camera off and now start getting ready to put my tray and arms and lights together. At the end of the dive trip, what I want to do, at the end of the dive, I want to rinse my camera off in tap water and dry it off real well. A lot of the boats you go on will give you an air hose that they use just like to fill up the tanks with, and you can blow the water away from your housing. You want to get as much away from the door as possible, as much water away from the door as you can. I then am going to open my door. I want to leave the camera at a little bit of an angle so that if there is any water, it will fall out onto the ground. I then open the housing. I lift up the mode knob, and I'm going to reach inside and remove my camera. At that stage, I'll put my flash back down. If there was any moisture that dripped into the housing, I'm going to dry that off, and then I want to close my housing so no moisture or sand or anything gets in it. And at that stage, I'm ready to view my pictures or download them to my computer. I hope this information's been helpful to you. A little bit of time assembling your gear before you go out diving and making sure everything is working fine will help ensure that you don't have a leak in your camera housing, you have a good battery, good memory cards, good pictures, and therefore you'll have good memories. Thank you very much. Have a good day.